Welcome back to Don and Friends. Let's get back to our visit with 103-year-old Marie Rainwater.
So then I just stayed with school and I finished a year down there. And in those days, after you had a year of college, you could teach. And I didn't get a job that year, so I went more or less back and forth to OSU and till I got a job at Ripley teaching where I'd graduated. And I was teaching in second grade, and I stayed there 2 years and taught those little fellows. And listen, they'd come to school with pasteboard in the bottom of their shoes to keep their feet off of the ground. And they had no lunch. Their family wanted them to have an education. And so I'd pack up a lot of fruit and stuff with Mom fried chicken, and some of it was left. She'd put that in. And I fed those little fellows. And one day I told them we'd have a picnic. I said, we'll go out to the ballpark. And I knew 3 women that had enough that they could send a cake or something to add to my picnic. Well, when we got ready to go, it was raining. So I said, children, let's just come up here and I'll clear off my desk and we'll have a picnic here in the room. So, and I said, whatever you brought from home, you can put up here. And I began to put out my stuff that I had brought. And I looked back and there were 3 of my little kids sitting with a cake in front of one, and the other had a dish of fried chicken, and the other, I forget what she had. And I said, aren't you children who want to come up and share that? Your mother sent that to be shared for the picnic. And this little old boy stretched up and he said, no, we're going to sit back here and have a picnic back here. And I thought, oh, that isn't the right thing to do. And no, sir, they're going to sit back there and eat all that food. So I thought, I've got to teach those 3 a lesson. Now, what can I do? And then I thought the kids all love these popsicles. So when we got almost through our meal, I gave a little boy money and I said, run down to the drugstore, and I counted how many was at my picnic. And I said, get everybody a popsicle. So when he came back, I started leafing these out to the children, and those 3 ran up and got in the line to have their popsicle, but I ran out just as I got to them. And the little boy said, where's our popsicle? I said, you didn't go on the picnic. This is just for the children that went on the picnic. And he just cried and went on. I said, you just will hush. I said, you sat back there with all that good food. And I said, you should have learned to share it with people. And I do think that was a good lesson to teach them. I think the main thing that's wrong with our country today is that we don't have good parents. Now, when I was growing up, my parents were concerned about me getting an education. They always saw to it that I had clothes to wear. They looked out they wanted me educated. And my elder grandmother on my mother's side used to say, if the Lord be with you, who can be against you? Well, I learned that, and I say that every day or two. If the Lord be with me, who could be against me? It's 1951, and I was hired as a financial secretary, and I taught 4 classes of business. And then finally I told them the financial business, I take care of all the money for the football games and all that. I said, I'm going to go back to the classroom. So they let me go back, and then I went over to OSU at night and on Saturdays and every summer, and finally got my master's in guidance and counseling. And that's what I really enjoyed. And to this day, all these kids, I was here 9 years as their counselor, and they'd come in and sit down and tell me anything in the world that was bothering them. And that way I could, and a lot of times I feel like that I had an inspiration for God. Like one boy, his father and he was ready to go on a trip hunting at Christmas time, and he died of a heart attack. And that boy then began to run around and drink, and he was mad at the world. And they'd send him down to me, and send him down to me, and I'd try to talk to him, and his mother called me, "Oh, do help him." Well, finally one day I was sitting there talking to that boy, and it just went through my mind. I said, "Don't you think your mother has suffered a loss too?" I said, "I know what's wrong with you." He said, "Well, if you do it more than anybody else does." And I said, "Well, I know it's because you lost your father and you were planning on going on this trip of hunting." And so I said, "You're bitter about it." I said, "Don't you think your mother suffered a loss?" And I say, "Why make it a hardship for her to look after you?" Well, that boy sat there and thought for a while, and he said, "Well, Ms. Rainwater, I think I had enough of counseling." I said, "All right." And he straightened up, and his mother later called me and said, "Well, I never saw such a change in that boy." Well, it was just, that happened time and time again. I would get an inspiration to say something to that person that would sort of make them wonder, well, what am I doing to myself? And I always told him, I said, don't get involved in drugs and liquor. And I said, go get an education. I said, when you graduate, how you spend your next 4 or 6 years is going to determine how you live 40 or 60. Well, they couldn't understand it. But now, when I meet up with these kids, they tell me how their life had changed by going back to college. On that computer, Rita has a computer,
Yes.
a large one. And then my grandson gave me an iPad, an Apple iPad, and I just learned how to operate it with Lorita's help. Well, sometimes I wish we didn't have an iPad and we didn't have a computer, because right here, Lorita and I'll sit here for hours and never say a word to each other because we have the iPad and we have the computer going. Well, you need that communication with each other. Well, I thank God every day that I've been permitted to live, and especially for my mind. So many of my friends have become Alzheimer's patients, and they've just lost out on everything. And I think one of the things is they've lost hope. And the thing about it is, so many of your older friends, you try to get them to go do something. I had them coming here to my house, and we played skip-bo every Thursday afternoon. And I did like some of them, they said, "Oh, I'm not interested." Oh, let me tell you, if you don't use it, you lose it. Because I got so that I can't write anymore. I just scribbled, and I had to teach myself to write my name over again, because I was bound I was going to sign my checks. As long as you're in power of your money, you got the ACE card. And if you turn over everything and let people get a power of attorney over you, and that's what I hate to see, is nowadays that some child will come along and go into court and take a doctor with them that I don't consider that person a doctor, but he'll swear that person isn't capable of living alone. And they'll stick them in some old nursing home and they never go visit them or anything, and then they become just like a vegetable. Well, who wants to do that? As long as you have power over that money and you have some friend that'll get you a lawyer that could tell what you want to do. Yes, I carry hope. I never think of dying. I hear them on the TV telling about how much it costs and all that. I think, well, that's going to happen, and if my father and mother, brothers and sisters can go through it, I surely am able to. So I'm not going to worry about the dying part. I'm going to worry about the living. I want to live. I get up every morning and think, what can we do now? Well, I think Cushing has done a real good job in with this tank farm out here. And the people are now, some of them that don't understand things, they're wanting to lay it on to the oil people causing these earthquakes. I say we didn't have the technology and we didn't have the equipment to take care of earthquakes. Every little shake in the earth, why, they've got it an earthquake, and they're laying it on the oil people.
We'll be back with more of Marie Rainwater right after this.
You're watching RDMG TV.